So have you ever found yourself with like a free evening? That hankering for something a little more stimulating than endlessly scrolling through social media.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, well, maybe what you need is a deep dive into the world of solo board games.
Ooh.
And I don't mean like a dusty deck of playing cards. We're talking about games designed specifically for one player.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and we've got some great sources to guide us today. We're talking articles from Boooored.com. They seem to be all about solo gaming these days, and a really interesting excerpt from the GameCraft podcast.
Sounds like a recipe for a fascinating deep dive.
Definitely. We're going to figure out why solo gaming is having such a moment, and maybe even help our listeners find their next gaming obsession.
Love it.
So the GameCraft folks made a really interesting point. It's not just about having something to do when your friends are busy. It's about the unique benefits that solo board gaming offers.
Yeah, they really honed in on the convenience and challenge aspect, which I thought was spot on.
Right, like coordinating schedules with friends. It's practically a part-time job these days.
Tell me about it.
But with solo gaming, it's like, hey, I've got 15 minutes free, time to conquer a fantasy kingdom, all before dinner.
I love that. And you touched on something important, that conquer part. It's about challenging yourself strategically, testing your skills against the game mechanics in a way you don't really get with multiplayer games.
It's like a mental workout, but way more fun than a Sudoku puzzle.
Exactly. And GameCraft also mentioned that solo gaming can be both relaxing and a way to improve focus. It's like you're engaging your brain in this mindful way, escaping the everyday chaos.
Totally. You get so absorbed in the rules, the strategy.
Mhm.
It's almost meditative. Have you found that?
Oh, absolutely. It's that mindful engagement, that escape from the constant noise that's so appealing. And what I find fascinating is the sheer range of experiences within solo gaming. GameCraft highlighted this by contrasting those quick pick-up-and-play games with these, like, sprawling, epic adventures.
It's like choosing between a gourmet coffee break and a weekend getaway, but for your brain, right?
Yes. And for those quick hits of fun, they mention Friday, where you're helping Robinson Crusoe survive on a desert island, but with deck-building mechanics.
So strategic island survival on your lunch break, basically.
Right. Or Honorum, this beautifully illustrated card game where you're navigating a labyrinth of dream cards. It's surprisingly thinky for such a quick game.
I can see myself getting lost in that one.
And if you've ever been stuck in traffic and wished you could redesign the entire city layout, they mention Sprawlopolis, this pocket-sized city-building game.
Oh, I've heard good things about that one. But GameCraft also mentioned games on the opposite end of the spectrum. Mage Knight, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently you're basically living a fantasy RPG, but solo.
It's known for its complexity and how it sucks you into this rich fantasy world.
That level of immersion, though, makes me want to clear my schedule for a whole weekend.
And then there's Arkham Horror, the card game. The Lovecraftian horror really adds to the immersive experience.
Ooh, building your investigator's deck, battling monsters, and unraveling creepy mysteries. I'd have to set the mood with some spooky music for that one.
Oh, for sure. It'd be like stepping into a horror movie, but you're in control. Or are you?
Okay, you just sold me on a game night. But speaking of games that seem to be everywhere, both GameCraft and Boooored.com raved about Gloomhaven. It's like, this game is inescapable.
Gloomhaven is definitely a game that gets people talking, and for good reason. It's a legacy-style game, meaning your choices have consequences that carry over from one session to the next.
So it's like you're building a story with each game.
Exactly. And GameCraft mentioned that they actually have a more accessible version called Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, for anyone who wants to try it out before committing to a potentially huge game.
A starter version of an already massive game. It's official. Gloomhaven is on my list of things to investigate.
It's a good one.
And Boooored.com really went in depth on it, especially on the character progression aspect. You're leveling up, unlocking new abilities. It's like they mashed an RPG and a board game together.
Which, let's be honest, is a recipe for success.
Totally. But, there's another side to solo gaming that I'm really curious about. Print and play games.
Oh, yeah. It's like this whole underground world of creativity and affordability.
Print and play games. Okay, that sounds almost too good to be true. Like, I can get a whole new gaming experience without even leaving my house.
Right, and the quality is there, too. It's like this treasure trove of indie games, often way cheaper than published games, sometimes even free. You can find everything from simple card games to complex strategy epics, all print and play.
See, now I'm really curious. What are some of the standout print and play games? Because I'll admit, I am very tempted, but my first thought is always, am I really going to print a whole game?
Oh, I think you might be surprised. Boooored.com highlighted this game Utopia Engine. It's a dice game where you're rebuilding a machine to, get this, save the world from the apocalypse, and it's all done with dice.
Okay, trying to avert the apocalypse with dice, I'm already on board. It sounds intense, but also kind of hilarious.
Right. It's that mix of tension and lightheartedness that really makes these games so unique. And Gamecraft and Boooored.com both mentioned Orchard, a 9-card solitaire game. They even had a whole article dedicated to it.
9 cards. 9 cards to rule them all. It's wild to me that something so simple can win awards and get so much praise.
It's like that saying, good design is as little design as possible. Orchard really proves you don't need a million components or crazy rules for an engaging experience.
It really makes you wonder what other gems are out there, right? Simple, elegant design. But before we completely fall down that rabbit hole, let's get back to some other games Gamecraft mentioned. Terraforming Mars especially caught my ear.
Ugh. Terraforming Mars. The game where you get to be a space entrepreneur, transforming Mars into a livable world. It's a classic engine-building game. So you're collecting and using components, in this case cards, with different technologies to power your actions.
So you're not just terraforming a planet, you're building the engine to do it. I love that. It's strategy and sci-fi all in one.
Exactly. And there's so many different ways to approach the game, it's super replayable.
I can already imagine myself getting totally sucked in, building my Martian empire one forest at a time. But I do love a challenge. And fast. The Crystal Caverns.
Yeah.
That sounds right up my alley.
Vast is something else. Boooored.com called it total asymmetry, and they were not kidding. You can play as the knight exploring the caverns, a bunch of goblins, a dragon, or even the cave itself.
Hold on. The cave is a playable character. How does that even work?
Each role has totally different abilities, goals, even components. So like if you're the knight, you're probably exploring the caverns, fighting monsters, while the goblin player is off causing chaos and hoarding treasure.
Okay, but the cave...
Let's just say the cave plays by its own rules, changing and shifting to mess with everyone's plans.
Oh man, that's amazing. So unpredictable. Every game is going to be completely different depending on who or what you're playing. I'm sold. Though, Boooored.com did say you need some extra stuff, right? A corner rounder and laminating pouches. A little more than just hitting print.
It is a bit more effort, but that's part of the fun for a lot of print and play people. Putting your own spin on it, and think about it, holding your own custom copy of a game. There's a real satisfaction to that.
Okay, fair point. Crafting something unique, something you can actually be proud of. Okay, you've convinced me. But before I run off to find my laminator, what about enhancing the solo gaming experience in other ways? Gamecraft mentioned some interesting tips about that.
Oh yeah, they did. They were talking about creating a dedicated gaming space. Even if it's just a corner of a desk, it's about setting the stage, getting in the mood for some quality solo time.
I do like that. It's easy to just plop down on the couch and play, but taking a few minutes to light a candle, put on some music, it becomes less of an activity and more of a ritual.
Exactly. And speaking of music, they suggested picking soundtracks to match whatever game you're playing. Imagine playing Arkham Horror with some creepy ambiance in the background, or Gloomhaven with this epic orchestral score.
Stop! The immersion! Suddenly, I'm not at my kitchen table anymore. I'm in a haunted mansion fighting off monsters.
See? And with solo gaming, you can really tailor the experience. Dim the lights, pretend you're in a tavern while playing Gloomhaven. No one's there to judge your elaborate setup or anything.
Exactly. This is what I love about these deep dives. It's not just about the games, it's about creating an experience. And one of the best things Gamecraft pointed out is that you're free from the pressure of playing at someone else's pace.
It's your own time. You can take your time with decisions, savor the good moves, even the bad ones. And if you want to try a house rule or two, go for it.
It really changes how you think about being a gamer. You don't need a whole group or a ton of space. Just curiosity and a willingness to see what's out there, and maybe a printer that's up for the job.
It's about finding games that grab you, that make you want to just clear your schedule and disappear into their world, whether it's some sprawling fantasy epic or a 9-card puzzle.
I'm starting to think everyone needs a little solo gaming in their lives, a vacation for your brain. But we've covered a lot here. Any final thoughts for our listeners before they set off on their own solo gaming journeys?
Isn't it funny how we started talking about solo board games as this thing you do when your friends aren't free?
Right.
But it really feels like a whole movement,
So,
like a different way to connect with games and even yourself.
it's like we unlocked a secret level of gaming, But you're so right. It's way more than just filling time.
Oh, yeah.
It's about challenging yourself, pushing your own limits, and maybe discovering you're a secret strategy mastermind.
Or that you can survive the apocalypse with, like, 5 dice?
Right. But really, I hope people listening realize there's this whole world of solo gaming out there.
Totally.
And the best part, you don't need anyone's permission to dive in.
Exactly. And you don't have to be a board game expert to enjoy it either.
That's so true. This deep dive really showed us that no matter what you're into, whether it's those super intricate campaigns
Yeah.
or just a quick card game, even making your own print-and-play games,
Felt good.
there's something out there for everyone.
Definitely.
So I'd say think about the games that really piqued your interest. Was the theme, the way the game works, maybe one specific thing about it?
That little spark.
That spark is your guide, Follow it. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try something new. Make it your own.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
Exactly. It's finding that joy, that escape, but also that challenge, and doing it all on your own terms.
And who knows, maybe you'll even learn something new about yourself along the way.
I love that. And on that note, I think we'll let our listeners get to their gaming adventures.
Happy gaming.
We hope this deep dive has inspired you to dust off those dice, shovel some cards, maybe even get that printer warmed up for a little DIY action. Happy solo gaming, everyone.